millions of pro photographers, including past me, use a 24-70 f2.8 zoom lens every day. It's the workhorse, it's the moneymaker, it's the Swiss Army lens. So here's why I think you shouldn't buy one, whether you're just getting started, a full-time pro, or somewhere in between. Now, back in the film era, and to be honest, up until about the 2010s, a zoom lens was a kind of a compromise. You had to sacrifice a fair bit of image quality to get the zoom to, zoom, and the autofocus was usually a bit poo as well. Now, that's not the case at all anymore, and modern zoom lenses are bonkers sharp, look stunning, and focus instantly. It would also be pretty bonkers and stunning if you subscribed to the channel. Sure, some primes are maybe technically a wee bit sharper, but really only under lab testing conditions, and in the real world you won't notice the difference. And I used to be a 24-70 person. I actually used mine so much that I killed 2 of them in 1 year, and I was on my 3rd by the time I sold it and switched to primes. I'll talk about specific lenses that I like later, but as always, all the gear that I use is linked in the description. So why not zooms then? If they're just as good and more versatile, isn't that just a no-brainer? Well, remember how I used mine pretty much constantly? That's the first reason I think you shouldn't get one, because it'll be glued to the front of your camera. Now, I would never call myself an expert in art, but I know enough to be pretty convinced that most masterpieces are not the result of playing it safe. See, the 24-70 it is comfortable. You know that you can get every shot you want. You know exactly what it's going to look like, how it's going to feel, and what it's like to use. But I think a part of the magic of photography that we fell in love with in the first place is the experimentation, trying new things and seeing what happens. I think playing is a really important part of the artistic process, and I don't just mean switching lenses around, although that is part of it. I also mean, like, if you go and shoot something with one prime, say a 50, you'll still find yourself standing in places you wouldn't usually stand, even if you shoot a zoom set to 50mm all the time. And another thing that you'll notice is that at the end of the day, your hands don't look like this. 24-70s are pretty big and heavy. Yes, the newer ones are getting lighter. The latest Nikon one is like 670 something grams, which is crazy. But if you're still on a DSLR, try over a kilogram. Now, I know that that's not that heavy compared to your bench press, okay? But holding it out in front of you all day, every day, it does wear on the old rotator cuff, if you know what I mean. Plus, a lot of photographers travel a lot. Maybe you gotta fly out to destination weddings or conferences, or like me, you live in a big, dense modern city, and so you're taking public transport. Lighter and smaller gear is so much nicer to use, it's nicer to own, and it's way nicer to travel with. And speaking of traveling, one thing a prime lens will force you to do is zoom with your feet. Yes, I know you're technically not zooming because you're not changing the focal length and that you're really cropping with your feet, but it's more fun to say zoom. I've mentioned this before a little bit, but the gist of it is sometimes you being physically closer to your subject can make a massive difference to the end result. You aren't just a floating camera, you're a person, hopefully, and the other people that you're taking photos of will react differently to different distances, and so will you. Plus, even if you know that, but you still have a zoom, you will inevitably make the same mistake that I used to make all the time, which is to see something happening and take one shot at 24, one at 28, 35, 50, and then 70, and then take 5 steps closer and do the same thing again. I thought we were supposed to be making creative decisions here, people. This seems a little bit like we aren't thinking about which one of those 20 photos is actually going to tell the story the best way. And yeah, sure, you might go out with a 35mm lens on your camera and then see a story that you really, really wish you could tell at 70mm. But a lot of the time that this has happened to me, the photos that I ended up with anyway were surprising and interesting, and generally, I think, a better outcome than if I'd played it safe. Plus, if you're shooting a series, for example, if you're doing lots of different portraits on different days, or if you're shooting the same street every day for a whole month, using a prime lens can create a bit of a consistent look to it. It's kind of jarring to go from 24 to 50 on the same page, and using a prime can kind of constrain how wacky you go, and it can make a series of images feel a bit more glued together, part of the same world. But now you're saying, but Hunter, you haven't even mentioned that prime lenses are faster. That's also true. It's just not a major factor for me personally. I like to shoot stop down with really deep focus most of the time. But if you are into shallow depth of field, it's way easier to achieve that look with primes, especially if you're into really blurry bokeh maxing backgrounds. You know what else is helpful and fast? That's right, building a website with today's video sponsor, Framer. Framer is the best tool for creating and publishing websites. And so instead of spending tonight doom scrolling B&H Deal Zone, I think you should build yourself a portfolio website. I made this one with Framer, zonefocused.com. I used a pretty minimal design so it doesn't distract from my intensely chaotic photos, and it was so easy I could hardly believe it. It's linked below if you're interested. Framer makes it so easy to flex your creativity where you want it, and so easy to not do that at all for the boring stuff like headers and footers, where you can just use their pre-built sections and plugins. There's even a massive library of website templates if you need some inspiration or you would like to steal like an artist. Even if you're just starting out as a photographer, having a place online to showcase your work lets you and your friends and family know that you're taking this seriously. It transforms your photos from content into art. Plus, Framer makes it really easy to format your portfolio however you want and to update your photos whenever you want. And on top of all of that, Framer is crazy powerful when you do want to get under the hood and do some more advanced stuff. It's got fantastic analytics, A/B testing, and even localization for sharing your work globally. So this evening, make yourself a cup of tea and build your portfolio website with Framer. Sign up using the link in the video description, and while you're at it, use the code HunterCreates for an upgrade on the house. A big thank you to Framer and to you for your support. Hold on, Hunter, you're saying, I get that there are some advantages to prime lenses, right? But if all the pros are using a 24-70, surely they must be better, right? Well, yes, but also no. See, the 24-70 f2.8 zoom lens as a category, they're designed for professional use, which means you do get the benefits that come with that, things like weather sealing and professional build quality, but it also means they usually have quite a professional rendering. They're sharp and they're clean, and they're designed not to have too intense of a look to them. They're designed to give you a flat base to work from. If you want that, great. But maybe you don't. Maybe you want to play around with funkier lenses that have more defects like the Helios 44-2, or even just older film era lenses with different elements, different constructions, and different coatings like these Pentax 6.7 lenses. And on top of that, at least for me, the 24-70 always feels like a bit of a work lens, and I don't want to feel like I'm working when I'm taking photos. I want to feel like I'm playing, and I think that ironically, I make my best work when I feel like I'm playing. Yes, I agree. A lot of pros swear by their 24-70, but also 99% of photographers aren't pros. They're doing it for fun or for artistic expression, or because they have the same mental illness that I do, where if I don't create something every 5 minutes, my head will explode. And pros have very different needs to non-pros, and that doesn't mean pro stuff is better, but you don't need it, you rookie. For example, the entire concept of fun means very little to a professional photography workflow. In fact, a lot of pro photography decisions come down to just minimizing risk and maximizing profit, which is, if your photos are a business, that's the correct thing to do if you need to make a profit and feed your family. It's not, though, always the best approach if you're doing something for literally any other reason. If you think about the best music and movies of all time, not very many of them were playing it safe. Record executives laughed at The Who because they said Baba O'Reilly was too long. Master and Commander is in my top 4 movies of all time, and they literally built a boat for that movie, okay? It had a budget of $150 million. Did it make a profit? No, but yeah, they made some art. Hunter, you've interrupted me for a third time now. You said that at the start of the video, even pros might not want to get a 24-70. Yeah, if you shoot live music or weddings or events, then it probably makes a lot of sense, but there's a lot of other pro photography situations where it just kind of doesn't. If, for example, you want to do kind of high-end editorial Vogue magazine type stuff, you don't need a zoom for that at all, and it would be totally normal and expected for you to turn up with a giant suitcase full of prime lenses. And the same goes for literally anything that happens in a studio, whether that's product photography or food or even portraits. In fact, if you are in a studio, primes are really helpful because you can leave everything set up exactly where it is, go home, come back the next day, and know that your lens will be the exact same focal length that it was yesterday. With a zoom, you never know if anyone slightly bumped it, and you can never get them set exactly the same. And above all else, 24-70s are expensive. If you're on a mirrorless camera like RF or Z mount, you're looking at like well over $1,000, even used. And even if you're on an older DSLR, you're still probably going to spend more than what your camera cost. And look, I'm not the sort of person that hates on expensive gear. I think if you like it and you can afford it, why not get some Gucci lenses? Get a gold-plated Leica, for all I care. But for most of us, I think that there's a better approach. For the price of one 24-70, you can buy like 2 to 5 brand new mirrorless prime lenses. That's like barely even a compromise, and everyone knows it's way more fun to buy 5 things than one thing. Or even better, you could just buy one prime.
You could stop at 5 or 6 stores, or just one. I feel like a deer in the headlights of love.
I love the 40mm f2. Then you can spend the rest of your photography budget on stuff that most people don't. Hair and makeup artists, costume. Heck, why not rent out a film set for a day and take photos on that? Or get on a plane and go somewhere. Or, and this is where you have to hold onto your hat, go even further up the chain and think about like your life. It's a lot easier to be creative if you're well rested. Maybe buy one prime lens and then an air conditioner for your bedroom. You could get a fancy water filter or new glasses or a slightly broken 1999 Toyota Camry, and nothing will change your life more than that, let me tell you. Or you could buy that one lens that the internet tells you that you need to have to be a real professional. You could even go secondhand. Like for the price of a used 24-70 for Nikon F mount, you can basically have a gigantic library of the AFD lenses, or you could go even older and basically have any vintage lens you could possibly want, as long as it doesn't say lights on it. And speaking of, watch this video next where I'll show you my top 5 vintage lenses that you can stick on basically any digital camera. And yeah, spoiler alert, all 5 of them combined cost less than a used 24-70. Stay hydrated and create art.